and welcome everyone. My name is Lisa M. Harrison, and today I'm speaking with Colin Joe Byrne from South Africa. And I'm not going to do a big preamble to introduce him because I really want Colin to share who he is in his own words. But Colin, welcome, and I want to say thank you for agreeing to come out and speak publicly. I know you haven't done that before.
Hi, Lisa. Yeah, my story goes back quite a while to about the year 2003 when I was just living a normal kind of 3D life that everyone else experiences. When my consciousness began to change through a series of dreams that I had, and where I met certain beings who introduced themselves to me and then began training me to do some work that they called grid keeping.
Well, Colin, before you move into that, can I ask a question, which is, who were you leading up to 2003? Because were you someone who would consider themselves a conspiracy theorist, or were you were you following some sort of New Age programs, or were you heavily embedded in the Matrix and completely asleep? I mean, who were you prior to 2003?
Yeah, I was sort of coming out of a kind of lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I'd met a lady who was a Reiki master, and I began visiting with her, not because I wanted to learn from her anything about Reiki, but because she lived in a very nice town, and it was right next to the sea. It was, and it was a very convenient kind of lifestyle for me to live in Cape Town from Monday to Friday, then Friday leave to go live in Hermanus from Saturday and Sunday. So I was living a very kind of happy-go-lucky kind of lifestyle, and but she started introducing me to the notion of spirituality. I was not really interested in it at all, and in fact, it took something of a kind of event to get me to actually open my eyes and begin to explore it. And what happened, we were sitting in her garden one Saturday morning, and she'd given me a book to read called Illusions by Richard Bach. Mm-hmm. And while I was reading this book, the pages kind of exploded up into the air. Mm-hmm. And we both looked at each other and we started laughing. And
so this is something that's been thought too. This wasn't just in your own mind or consciousness. This was physical.
Yeah. No, this was an actual physical experience. So we laughed about it because earlier on we'd been talking about bookbinding and how she had some very old books and how well those books had held together. And so to have this book suddenly kind of just come apart in my hand, we started laughing because, we'd just been talking about it earlier on. And so she said to me, the universe must be trying to tell you something. So put the book together again and go back to where you were reading, because the universe wants to attract your attention. So I then put the book together again, and then the part I was reading was where this one character in the book is taking the other character to a movie. And then when he comes out of the movie, he says to the person he'd taken to this movie, he said, life is like a movie. It's not real. And so she said, well, maybe that's what the universe is trying to tell you, that life is like a movie. And so I kind of laughed it off, didn't expect anything. And then in the following week, I was sitting with another friend at her desk, and one of her friends came up and said, wow, I've read this amazing book. It's called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And she went on about this book and explaining about the holographic universe and what she'd learned from the book. And then she said to me, have you read it? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, oh, you must go buy it. So I left my friend's office and walked down the passageway of this shopping center, and I looked down into a bookstore, and the first book I saw in the window was The Holographic Universe.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, this is too much synchronicity for me. So I went and bought the book and I read it. And so that's how my journey there. The universe kept drawing my attention to something that I needed to know that I didn't know. And so the next thing that happened, I kind of started having, well, my first experience was I was in the shower one Saturday morning and I heard a rumbling sound in my head, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I looked outside the shower, opened the shower door, looked out, called my girlfriend, asked her if she was standing nearby, and she wasn't. She was in her studio somewhere else. And so I started to pay attention to this rumbling sound in my head, and then this rumbling sound began to speak to me. And it was a very slow, drawn-out voice, and this person, in a very slow way, told me that they were going to send someone to me to teach me, and that I should pay attention to that. So I didn't think too much about it. I told my girlfriend about this, and she said, "Did the person tell you their name?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'll ask the next time if they speak to me again."
So was there any interaction
anyway,
at this point?
I beg your pardon?
Or did you interact with it at this point, or was it just you hearing messages?
It was just me.
Okay.
But she was very interested to see what was happening to me, and wanted to know all the details, as women would do. And anyway, then a couple of weeks later, I was lying in bed, and I had a feeling that there was someone standing next to my bed. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling. You just sense the presence of someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of just slowly turned my head to have a look, and there was this very dark figure who, it was a figure of a man in a cloak, and he was as high as the ceiling, a very big man. And of course, it gave me such a fright that I ducked under the sheets and wouldn't have a look. And when I eventually kind of, developed the courage to go have a look, I looked, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And so I woke my girlfriend up, and I told her about it, and I said, this is what I saw. And she said, well, must be the person that your mentor had told you about, that is coming to teach you. So next time, don't run away. Maybe just spend some time, looking at it. And so a few weeks later, I had the same experience, but this time I didn't hide or anything. I just kept staring into this dark figure standing at the end of my bed. And eventually I heard him telepath to me, and he said, I shouldn't be afraid, that his name was Maha.
Maha?
He was Maha.
Maha.
And he'd been sent to teach me some things, and that I want to learn. And I said, yes, I do want to learn, but what are you going to teach me? And he said, I'm going to teach you everything, how the universe works. And of course, that piqued my interest, because I've always had a great sense of curiosity, and I was very curious as to what he was going to tell me about.
An offer you couldn't refuse.
Anyway, yeah, that was an offer I couldn't refuse. So we chatted a while, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he said, I'm going to teach you things that you've never learned about, and the people in the world don't know about. They know about it, but they're still asleep. They haven't woken up to the reality yet. And so we went through a process of, that was the last time I actually saw him. Then after that, he would come into my consciousness in dream state. And he explained that he did that because he didn't want to frighten me, because he's a very big man, and he could see I was quite afraid of him. So he would enter into my dreams in dream state and take me on journeys and show me things. And, and so he explained his role was to teach me what he called energetics. And that's how energy works, the dimensional nature of reality, how frequency works and harmonic universes and harmonic bandwidths work and how they create reality. And of course, this got me thinking about things. And, you know, he didn't only teach me that, he was very good at using illustrations from our reality here to explain the universe. For instance, the dimensional nature of reality. He explained to me that, you know, in our reality here, we tend to see life on the cellular level, which is the level at which we can observe things in a cellular state. But below the cellular state, there were the molecules that are creating the cells in our body and creating cells in all things. And below the molecular state is an atomic state, where the atoms, that is he called it the kingdom of the atoms, and then below the atoms was the kingdom of the quarks, or the standing scalar waves, as he called them, the morphogenetic fields, as our science calls it here. And then below that, there is the quantum level, or the quantum kingdom. And then he kind of began to teach me about quantum mechanics and quantum physics, but in a different kind of way from his perspective. And, you know, I was not a scientist or not interested in science before, had no inclination towards science at all. But he was explaining it in a way that I could understand better. For instance, he drew my attention to the split hole experiment, where scientists, you know, directed electrons or photons at electrons and photons at a screen, and then they noticed when these electrons were observed, they were particle forms, and when not observed, they were waveforms. So they drew the conclusion that there are two realities. There's a waveform reality and there's a particle reality. But our science has tended to ignore the wave reality and don't know very much about it. So he began to teach me about the wave fields in the universe and the significance of the wave fields in our reality here.
Well, can I ask you
things? Sure, go ahead.
Just on a more personal level, did you come to understand who this being is and who this being is in relationship to you?
Yes. I later learned the first person who had contacted me was my higher self, or myself, in dimensions 10, 11, 12. And then the next person I met, who was Iesmir, who then later became my mentor, he lived in the dimensions of 7, 8, and 9. And Maha was my higher self from dimensions 4, 5, and 6. So in a sense, all those beings were connected to me, had a direct soul connection to me, and were part of my soul family. But their reality that they were experiencing was in a different dimensional field or different reality field. So they were, all of them, working together with me to raise my consciousness to a level where I could move my consciousness out of the matrix here and experience higher dimensional frequencies, so that I could experience, for instance, we live in a physical world here. The next level of dimensionality, the next bandwidth of harmonics is a semi-etheric field, and then the harmonic universe that Iesma lives in is an etheric world, and beyond that is the light and sound fields, where physicality doesn't exist as we know it here. It's
okay,
just really...
From what I understand, from what I've read of your posts, you've come to the understanding that we are in a hologram, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is a construct.
Yes. Like any other construct, but
yes.
You know, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So it's my understanding that the construct that we are in includes all of the dimensions that you just mentioned. So, to your understanding, are these aspects of these beings within the greater construct that we're in?
No, well, we actually live in a universe with many reality fields, but we're only experiencing dimensions 1, 2, and 3 here. We haven't learned to make the connection into other dimensional fields yet. You know, and I can explain how that works. But our hologram here is a made-for-you movie. It's what they call a holographic insert. So our consciousness is being controlled with a hologram that is designed to control our minds, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and it kind of creates a barrier around us that, you know, is like a frequency fence, so that we can't experience the rest of the universe.
A membrane, so to speak?
Beg your pardon?
Would you call it a membrane?
No, it's more, I don't know if you know anything about how signals can be blocked. You can block signals.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of a signal blocking system that starts in Saturn. It's downstep to Jupiter, and then downstep to Mars, then downstep to the Moon, and so the signal comes all the way down until it creates a total fence of frequency around this planet. So
yeah, I do have some experience with the tech you're talking about, so I understand what you're saying.
Right. Now, in 2014, I was told that my work as a grid keeper was over, that I would still be a grid keeper, but that specific work that I was doing as a grid keeper was complete. But that then I should now go and explain to the world. I should become more public and explain, you know, go tell people. So I had started doing that. I had no idea how I was going to get this message across because it's so kind of crazy.
Oh, you're talking to crazy, so you're all good.
Yeah, it's so detailed, you know, and there's so much to learn. For instance, our DNA is just a programming device. It's a programming language that's been inserted into our reality. That's how all beings experience their reality, through their DNA. But we don't realize that part of our DNA that we call junk DNA is actually contains the information from our soul history. So like our genetic DNA, that part of our DNA that controls our genetics it carries the history of our genetic history. Mm-hmm. In other words, our parents, grandparents, and so on, all the way until our first cause of being apparent on this planet as human beings. But in our junk DNA, that also contains information, and it contains the soul information. In other words, it contains the information not only of this incarnation and of our incarnational life here on this planet, but of other incarnations on other planets. But our science has discarded it as junk DNA because they don't know what it is and what it does. But Russian scientists have started, you know, in the last 15 odd years, have started understanding better what junk DNA is about, and they're finding some amazing things and properties about junk DNA that will eventually lead to the discovery that you know, it contains information about our soul history.
Yeah. So what do you say to people who talk about we should have 12 strands of DNA, for example?
I beg your pardon?
What do you think of the argument that we're supposed to have 12 strands of DNA?
Well, yeah, In actual fact, we do. That's the funny thing about it. But in the cellular incarnation, in other words, our cellular being, the physical being, only has 2 strands, but our soul identity still holds the 12-strand imprint.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not apparent in our cellular world because our genetics have been mutated by the controllers here. But the 12-strand imprint, or the pattern, or the template for the 12 strands still exists in our soul body, and we can learn to activate more of our DNA through using frequency techniques.
You kind of make it sound like somebody with an amputated limb. It's like the energetic is still there, the blueprint is still there. It can be felt, but it's not showing up in physicality.
Yeah, not until recently. There've been many children now being born with 3 strands of DNA. It's quite a new phenomenon, but I think what is happening as the consciousness of the planet changes, and it's a group thing, it's a kind of 100 monkey syndrome. As the consciousness of the planet changes, so more DNA will be activated, and it's not only our genetic DNA, but our junk DNA as well. And so the 12-strand potential will become to be realized in our genetics.
Is your contact still current? Is it still currently happening?
Well, once he taught me what he needed to teach me, and he introduced me to Aizmir. Now, Aizmir's sort of function in teaching me was to teach me about the politics and the galactic makeup and the nature of reality in other reality fields, and he introduced me to the other beings in our universe. We call them aliens, but I think they think we're the aliens, actually. So I began to understand more about the galactic and universal politics, and how reality and bandwidths, and how beings can move from one reality system to another reality system. I began to learn about wormholes, bilocation, translocation, and how one can exist in the universe, how we were meant to actually exist in the universe. But this information has been kept from us and hidden from us, so we don't have access to it. So I began Israel was to teach me that, and he then stayed with me during that period of time when I was a grid keeper, and he would keep me informed as to what was happening in the higher dimensions, and what our higher beings who are surrounding this planet. This planet's got spaceships galore, around it, and what they do, and they're breaking down this frequency fence, but they don't want to rip it open, because if this frequency fence was ripped open, it could damage our templates, our soul templates. So it's a kind of gradual opening up of the frequency fence, so that we can begin to understand who we are as higher dimensional beings. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. I have a different take, but what you're saying, I can I can see what you're saying. In other words, yes.
Yeah.
Have they said anything to you in more recent times, if the contact is ongoing, about the current state of the tech that you referred to, Saturn, Jupiter, Moon? Have they said anything about that?
Yeah, that they just keep, Aisma just keeps popping up into my consciousness and tells me everything's going according to plan. Because in 2014, he was reassigned to be part of the galactic councils and to work with the galactic councils. So our contact is quite infrequent now, but so every now and again he just drops in and explains, like, you know, he told me that Donald Trump was going to be the president of the United States long before Donald Trump even, you know, entered into the primaries.
Did he say for what purpose?
And that's, beg your pardon?
Did he say for what purpose?
Yeah, it's to break the hold of the cabal on the financial systems, the economic systems, military systems. There's a whole world of satanic activity that goes on this planet, and it's being controlled, and it's for a long period of time, and it's being controlled by a certain group of people. But Donald Trump is on the fringe of those people, but he's not quite in the inner circle, and he doesn't know all about yet. He doesn't know yet all about the satanic ritualism that's going on, and but he's learning fast.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think? Okay, so was his position, or his gaining the role of president? Was that orchestrated? Who was it orchestrated by? By within, amongst the human beings and amongst the military and the governments, or was it orchestrated by some other faction?
Well, yeah, just to explain, give you a little bit of history about that. In 2014, there was an act by the galactic beings, who our soul family, who began to bring down this frequency fence, and they invited the Anunnaki and the other beings who were off planet to leave, and otherwise they were going to do them harm. So many of them did leave the planet, but this left the Anunnaki, who are on planet, who are incarnated in human bodies. These are shapeshifters, the Conians, as they're sometimes called. But these are beings who are not human. They look human and they can act human, but they lack empathy. They lack any kind of compassion or love or anything. They're here solely as workmen and to run the trade on this planet, because there's a lot of intergalactic trade that happens from this planet, but we're not aware of it because it's hidden from us. Certain channels they use to do that, and so these beings no longer have the support of many of the Anunnaki off-planetary supporters, so they are starting to crack up a bit and becoming uncertain, because their plans of action are not as clear and their orders are not as clear as they used to be. So they're working independently, and they're trying to restore some kind of satanic order here. But they're finding it very difficult, because they're not being directed from the higher dimensional beings. They're having to formulate their own plans. And so many of them are panicking because of that. And
you're actually confirming the narrative that myself and one of my co-hosts, Dee, who's currently in the audience, have been following and chronicling since the beginning of 2013. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But can you just go back and repeat for a moment the bit about told them to get off? Who told them exactly when to get out of here?
I beg your pardon?
You said that they were the reptilian faction were told to, or the Draco, whoever we label them.
Yeah, they were told to leave.
When exactly was that, and by whom, in your opinion?
Well, this was in 2014 when there was an electric war on Saturn, and our higher selves, our soul family, began to break down the frequency fence. And at the same time, the frequency fence not only is like a block on our consciousness and our connection to the universe, it also controls through our DNA our behaviors and thoughts and feelings. So so our galactic family asked the Anunnaki to leave. Many of them did, some stayed, and they're still hanging around here, but they don't have the numbers that they used to have. They realized that the end is near, that they that you see, our higher selves became very concerned when the USA dropped atomic bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because that atomic explosion reverberates on an energetic level throughout the universe, and it has consequences in other reality fields. So they've been watching closely ever since that happened, and their UFO activity has increased around, but now they've really become concerned about the possibility of a World War III and an atomic war, and they don't want that to happen. So they are being very determined in their actions to make sure that that doesn't happen. Of course, the Anunnaki, they would like that to happen, and they've prepared for it, with the underground bases and tunnels and living systems outside of it. They think they can survive underground for 20, 30 odd years and then come out again. But the world they'll come out to will be a totally different world. It'll be totally destroyed. In a sense that there'll be no living organisms able to sustain life on this planet anymore. So it'll just be like a desert. So they're hoping then to replant and reseed the planet and go through that whole thing that they did when they first started the solar system up. But it takes so much time.
Can I ask how you bridge the language of what you're talking about, reseeding the planet, nuclear weapons affecting other realities, with this is a hologram?
Yeah.
How do you bring that together?
From my own experience, it was from that building of understanding, that I went through. First of all, of the nature of the universe, how reality is both a waveform and a particle form, what the construct of the particle form is. So you understand how, quanta create quarks, quarks create atoms, atoms create molecules, molecules create cells. So there's the construct. So I had to learn that there's a construct to everything. And on the opposite side of the fence, there's a construct to the non-material world, the non-cellular world. This is the frequency world. And it works according to the frequencies of light and sound. And the pulse or rhythm that is a universal rhythm that comes from the heart. What was I called comes from the heart of God. It's the heartbeat of God, or the pulse. As you know, our planet has a base pulse rhythm called the Schumann resonance, and that controls the frequency of the planet and the frequencies at the cellular level. But all of that cellular reality has a parallel non-cellular reality. So we live actually in two realities. The one is the cellular world of material manifestation, and on the other side there is the non-material world, the world of soul manifestation. So what I've been trying to do in my writings is to explain to people that there are souls who have a body and not bodies with a soul, and what the construct of the soul is. And it's all a dimensional construct, but it is a very real construct in that, and it works according to energy. And it's like having a long science lesson, but it took me many years to learn all this stuff, so it's not something I can just explain, in an hour session. It would take years to explain to somebody how it all works, as it did with me, because I was not very smart.
Just to go back and maybe confirmation for you too, is that from humans right here in physical on the planet, I was also told that they were told to leave in 2014. So there was a very physical human aspect to that.
Yes.
The humans were there. They were part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
There are groups of people on this planet who are consciously aware, and they've also been trained. For instance, when I became a grid keeper, I asked, "Am I the only grid keeper?" And Maha laughed at me and said, "No, there are 144,000 of you on the planet." So that gives you an idea of the number of people who are awake and aware, have been trained like I've been trained. So there are many people in different fields of occupation who've been doing this work for a long time.
So this grid that you speak of that you were working on, was this for want of a better term, I'm going to say organic grid, or was it the frequency fence you speak of?
Originally the planet was set up in such a way that there was something called Q sites, which are long crystal pylons that go deep into the earth, and they are the signaling system between the earth and the universe and other planets. And those Q sites could be activated to activate stargates. And stargates were a method of not only moving around. You had planetary stargates, which is you move around the planet through the stargates. You had a solar stargate, so moving through the solar system through the stargates. You had galactic stargates, which enabled you to go to other galactic systems. And then you had universal stargates, which allowed you to move into other universes, multiverses as it were. And so the grids, they were set up in a certain pattern and design that is universal. It's called the universal crystal grid, universal crystal something grid. I've forgotten it. The universal crystal lattice grid. So it forms a connection of the way that frequency moves around the planet. And once that was established, then this planet was safe. So my role in that was to take up the position of a Q site. And my Q site, which is in Johannesburg here, is a connection between the Q site, which is in Basra in Iraq, interestingly enough, and Stargate in the South Pole. So my function was to run frequencies in my soul body at the same level as those frequencies, to keep them active and to, so that our off-planetary family could work and bring in more higher frequencies onto the planet. So that was kind of the work that I was doing as a grid keeper. And there were 144,000 of us on the planet. But since 2014, we've all can now do whatever we choose to do.
Yeah, I think you're the third person I've spoken to who was part of that work.
Yeah, because the whole part of being a grid keeper, you have to live a very cloistered life. an insular life, because it's very difficult to detach from the 3D world when you always in it and you have all the noise coming through from the 3D world. So the longer you can stay cloistered and quiet and almost live a hermit life, you're able to run frequencies more regularly and able to go to higher frequencies. So I think most of us are very quiet, introvert kind of people. Although I've spoke to one or two who were like crazy people, not like me at all.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine most of us want to live this cloistered life because we've become used to it and we like it.
So can I ask what you feel our position is right now? What's the energetic landscape, so to speak?
Well, I think that we're in a stage now where people are being woken up. When I say woken up, people's DNA is becoming more engaged with the frequencies that are coming through, because our DNA is also a crystalline structure, minute crystals in DNA. And as that signaling system starts to work and we begin to connect through the wave fields around us, more and more people's consciousness is being activated. And as this begins to happen more and more, it creates a critical mass where the earth also begins to wake up and responds to the signaling coming from humans, and so it will respond and send that signaling back, and that complementary co-dependency from a frequency point of view lifts the frequency of the planet. But from my understanding, the intention of our higher beings is to assist the planet to go through a kind of a dimensional shift. Some people call it ascension, but it will be a kind of restoration of the original force fields around the planet. So, but this, of course, will create a massive consciousness problem for people who are attached to the 3D world and to normal cellular day-to-day living, because they won't know who they are, what they're doing here. Their identity is so locked into their physical identity that they won't be able to have their soul identity restored immediately. So it's a whole process of restoration from the soul level. And as people begin to activate their frequencies, that become more consciously aware that they're not just bodies, but they have souls. And as their souls begin to activate, so this will be a process that some people are calling the event will happen, where there will be the sudden shift in consciousness. Now, I have been through that shift myself, so I can tell you it's not very comfortable to go through it. And it leads to something that many call the dark night of the soul, where you actually feel you're going crazy and that you're losing your mind because you're so disoriented with, existing in a cellular world that is one way. And then you become conscious that you're a soul being, and there is a whole soul reality on the other side, and it's difficult to make them work together. And when I asked about how does one do that, and I was told you have to disengage, but still live in that reality. So it's like driving a motor car. You engage first gear, and you live in 3D world, and then you engage clutch, go into neutral, and you disengage from first gear, the 3D world, and then you engage second gear, which is going into a higher dimension. So you go through this process of moving in and out of the 3D-dimensional world, to experience the other reality. But if you stay engaged in first gear, the reality system we've got here, then that's all you'll experience. So it's kind of moving from one reality to the other reality, and doing that all the time. So you have engaged a detached engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've been talking about that and calling it detachment for a couple of years now, and watching this huge movement of people going through that, and it's expressing itself in lots of different ways. You know, even the small homes, this tiny houses kind of movement, I see as an expression of that. People going off grid, all that kind of stuff. They're all expressions of this, just throwing off their attachments.
Yeah. There are many people on this planet that, you know, who are waking up, and some really amazing soul beings out there that, you know, I'm so admire them so much. Like Corey Good, you know, he's come out now and explaining his experiences in the secret space program, and all that information is starting to come out. And people say, secret space program, what are you talking about? But I can say I knew about the secret space program long ago, because, you know, it's the off-planetary trade that's been going on is a dimensional system, you know, and we get stuck in a physical reality, and we don't understand that we can transform and go into higher dimensional states, which will enable us to move our physical bodies out of this reality to another reality. You know, but we just haven't been taught how to do that.
It's coming.
But that's sort of,
it's coming.
Yeah, but that's sort of how the space program works. They just know how to move use wormholes to move from one dimensional space-time continuum to another one.
I would just like to invite those in the chat room to put their hand up if they have a question for Colin. Please go ahead.
Sure.
Question, comment, anything like that, by all means, put your hand up. Okay, I've got one in the chat room by someone who doesn't have a microphone, which is, do you have a time frame for this event?
No. I know that 2047 is kind of a deadline date for pole shift, if I could put it that way. But I don't know when the event will occur.
What's the connection between the two?
Well, a pole shift will create a massive shift in consciousness as well, because the magnetic fields of the planet change, and our consciousness is based on the magnetic fields on the planet. You know, our consciousness moves from one pole to another. So we are all attractors, transmitters and receivers of signaling, you know, wave signaling. And as if the magnetic poles shift, then our own signaling system has to change, and that will create a massive change in consciousness. And our soul family are trying to avoid a sudden change in consciousness until the planet is ready. So the preparatory work is happening now. You know,
well,
things like
magnetics are changing now. The evidence are everywhere that everything is shifting dramatically when it comes to the electromagnetics.
Yeah, but we don't want complete reversal. of the magnetic fields, which is a possibility in 2047. But, little things will help to change our consciousness. For instance, the revelations about the pedophilia, that activity that happens here. And that will lead to the exposure of the satanic organizations and the satanic activities. And people will start asking more questions about who are these beings, what are they doing here? And of course, that's going to, they'll want answers to those questions. So they'll begin to search those sort of answers. There'll be the revelation of what actually caused 911, or what was behind it, and who was behind it. So all these things will start to become public, and that will lead to a lot of questioning. Now, this is a little energetic secret I've learned, and Maha taught me this. He said, you have to ask questions. Keep asking questions. And he sometimes wouldn't speak to me. He would just say, ask questions, question me. And one day I said, why do I have to keep asking these questions? Why can't you just tell me? He said to me that this knowledge is encoded into our DNA. And when we ask the question, we activate the answer within us. And activating the answer within us is better than just having an auditory response to our questioning. So I would encourage people to ask lots of questions. You have to start, because it activates the answers within you in your DNA.
We do have someone. Candice, by all means, unmute yourself, love.
I beg your pardon?
Candice, we have a question from Candice.
Okay.
Oh, hey there. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes, Candice, go ahead.
Oh, good. I apologise if this question you've already answered, because my Wi-Fi connection's a bit dodgy, and I'm missing some chunks of some of your responses, which, by the way, are amazing. So thank you for sharing. I just wanted to, really beautiful stuff. When you were talking about the grid work, that sort of triggered an experience. A friend of mine who's now passed was telling me that he used to do grid work. He used to be asked by his contacts to go use his grounding rod and work on the grids to raise the vibration of the planet. So that's just confirmation to hear you say that. It's just, wow, awesome. But my question being is, you were talking, I understand the grid stuff, but with the frequency aspect of what you were saying, how it gets bounced from Jupiter and Saturn, Mars, what was the purpose of that frequency technology? What was the purpose of that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, the primary purpose, it's called blank slate technology, or the beast system. The blank slate, what that activity does is we incarnate here with our memories bleached. So we incarnate here with no memory. We can't remember who we are. So the purpose of that technology is that once we die, and the death is really just an illusion, it's just entering into another cycle of reincarnation here. So we die, going to the frequency, through the frequency bends, our memories are bleached or wiped, and then we reincarnate. So we can't remember who we are. We can't remember our previous incarnation, and we have no soul identity. So they just keep us under control in that way. That's part of their control system.
Yeah.
Keep us ignorant and dumbed down.
Part of the rinsing.
And just one more question.
Sorry,
and just one more question, just one more question, if I may. Are you aware of any technology that sealed off this Milky Way galaxy from other realities or universes, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Look, it's you know, everything here is a lie. The planets that we view out there are not planets. They're just balls of frequency that we create through our consciousness. Everything we see in the sky is actually a dome over us, and we don't move around the sun moves around the earth. You know, everything, we've got it all wrong here, and we've been specifically taught the wrong things to keep us under control, because us going to the moon is a joke. That didn't happen. And NASA is really more of a propaganda organization than a real scientific aeronautical space program. Spaceships are just, as physical matter, they're not able to go through and endure the radiation fields that are in our atmosphere. So no spaceships have actually left our atmosphere, no physical spaceships. It's only the spaceships that are being created through the secret space program. And even those are not physical. Although they can be physical, they do have physical properties, they can be cloaked, become invisible and move out of through the radiation fields. But everything here is a lie. And so unlearning the lie is it's a process that we have to undertake. And the only way we can do that is to keep asking questions and keeping our minds open to new possibilities, and see that, that everything is possible in the universe. Everything is possible. And we're just part of that possibility field, but we don't understand it. We can't see that because we don't know. Our mathematics here keeps trying to solve for the unknown X factor in mathematical equations, and that X factor is the unknown. But when the unknown becomes known, then the equation changes. We no longer have mathematical equations seeking a solution to the unknown factor X. We then create new equations that are equations built on probabilities and possibilities. So our entire understanding here of the way things are in our science and literature and mathematics is trying to resolve the unknown X factor. And so what we have to try to do is unlock the unknown and to make it known, so that people no longer think in terms of language and mathematics, but begin to think in terms of concepts and understand that they live in multiple universes at the same time, and we have soul family and incarnate beings who are connected to us as soul family in other space-time continuum. And they know all about us, but we don't know about them because we've been blocked out. We don't understand. So there's a whole lie that's been created. It's been controlled by the Vatican, since the beginning of, since about 10,000 years BC. And the Vaticans are not a Catholic organization. They're actually an alien organization run by the dragon, Dracos. And they're not human.
One look at Ratzinger will tell you that.
Beg pardon?
I said one look at Ratzinger will tell you that.
Yeah.
So
there's a whole relearning process we have to go through.
Well, in terms of the message that you really want people to comprehend at this time, what do you feel is most important?
The most important is to understand that you're a wave soul being who has a body, and that the physical construct of your body comes from your soul. Your soul actually, by the frequencies in your soul, it actually determines your physical body. And it uses your DNA to do that. Because in your DNA, as I explained, you have your genetic and soul history in your DNA. So understanding oneself as a soul being is very important, because that begins to, you get a soul identity. And so if you lose your physical identity, you still have an identity, which is your soul identity. So that is, I think, the most important thing for people to learn, that they have a soul identity, they have a soul history, they're in a soul evolutionary process, and the process works in a particular way. And once they begin to understand how it works and what they are and where they're going and what their identity is and the construct of it all, it becomes pretty simple. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Just one question in regards, stepping back a bit to the Vatican. Are the Dracos still in charge of the Vatican? Is the Vatican running around at this moment just trying to clean up its messes, or are they still being controlled?
Yeah, they're in a bit of a mess at the moment, because a lot of the activities are being curtailed, and people are becoming more aware that, of what the Catholic Church is and what it's been doing, and of its satanic activity. So this whole illusion around the religion of Catholicism is being unraveled, and so they're panicking about that. They don't want that to happen, and he's trying to make noises. The Pope, the new Pope Francis, is trying to reconcile certain factions within the Catholic Church, because some factions within the Catholic Church want to go for the they want to have a disclosure, and the Pope is, of course, doesn't want that to happen, and there are other factions within the church who don't want that disclosure, because it'll unravel the whole lie of religion, and this notion that we need a savior, and there is a God up there somewhere who's looking down at us, judging us, and because of our sins. And so it unravel all of that nonsense. So yeah, the Catholic Church are trying its best to hold it all together, but yeah, they're in a panic.
Sorry, are their controllers still in the background though, pulling their strings, or are they amongst those who left?
Yeah, the Catholic Church has always had two popes. It's had the white pope and the black pope. The black pope is a Jesuit, and now the ex-black pope is now the white pope. So that's the first time in the history of the church, that's happened. And it happened for a particular reason, because they felt that was the only way the Jesuits could control the faction that want disclosure, because the Jesuits don't want that disclosure.
Well, it might explain why the Catholic Church, the Vatican, has just reined in the Knights of Malta. Yeah. There's so much that is being disclosed anyway on the alternative media. People like yourself who are interviewing and researching, and having people on their programs who have been researching this for a long time too. So a lot of this information is becoming available to people, and as people begin to wake up and they begin to understand how the system actually works, that it's going to unravel a lot of, because consciousness is just bits of information, and the way how that information is perceived. So the more information that gets out there, the more potential it has to change the energetics on this planet and the consciousness of the beings here.
because so yeah, it's very important that we have people like yourself and others who are doing what you're doing, because it's a form of disclosure of the truth.
Well, I actually think that's where the disclosure is going to come from. I don't feel it's going to come from governments, so-called. I think it's going to come from people. It's not going to come from official whistleblowers who have worked in these governments and corporations. I think it's people. It's the people are going to start sharing more and more, and their stories are going to get out, and that's where real disclosure will come from. So it's people like yourself.
Yeah, and there's many people who are, there is a people movement going on. Brexit was a people movement. The election of Donald Trump was a people movement. It was the people saying we don't want to be controlled by the cabal, by the elite anymore. We want to take back our governments. We want to take back our reality. We want to take back control of the systems. So everything's changing. It's in a melting pot.
We have a question from a listener who doesn't have another one who doesn't have a mic, asking, do you have any idea what's hidden in the Vatican, in their vaults?
Oh yeah, all the ancient information. These are not. There are something called the energetic plates, if I can call it that, but it's basically, these are holographic. The Ark of the Covenant, for instance, was an energy form. It was actually an electric generator. That's how it created sparks, and if you touched it, you would be electrocuted. And then there's a lot of plates that were recovered from various other ancient civilizations that are now underground in the Vatican. And they know about the history, true history of the planet. They know about how energetics work. They know about, things like Nibiru and what that is all about. And so, yeah, they have a large amount of ancient information that they have controlled. Yeah. So they've not allowed it to come out, but they've given us little bits of information just to keep us, keep our minds twisted. Things like the Bible has a little bit of information, good information, sound information, but it's got a lot of twisted information as well. So they give you the truth twisted and then say that's your reality. It's very diabolical.
Yeah, as we say here, everything is upside down, back to front, and inside out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Harry,
one has to.
Sorry, I'm just answering Harry. No, the answer to that would be no. Yes, if you can see a narrative allowed in your society, chances are it's polluted, or guaranteed it's polluted. Okay, before we wrap up, is there anybody else who's got a question or a comment that they'd like to ask Harry? Oh, sorry, not Harry, Colin.
No, I think we're pretty much done, Lisa. I hope everyone's benefited from this, and it helps some people to raise their frequencies. Just as a kind of a misnomer here on this planet, people think they have to raise their frequencies in order to connect to the universe. That's not true. The frequencies are already there. We just have to raise our ability to receive those frequencies. So it's raising one's consciousness in order to receive higher frequencies. It's not raising your body to a higher level of frequency. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you've actually provided a lot of confirmation for myself and others who are listening as to what has gone on, the work that has been done, and where we're going. Even though our language is different and our perceptions are different, but there's still a lot of confirmation there, and I want to thank you for that. It's part of the process right now, I feel, that those who have been
Yeah.
working together energetically all this time alone
Yeah.
are finally starting to connect and meet up and remember and share.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's wonderful.
that is wonderful because to me, the bulk of the work is done. And now it's time for people to come together.
Yeah. We have to walk into our new reality. That's what it is. It
Exactly.
already exists. We just have to walk through into it.
Yep, exactly. Agree completely. I really
It's been great talking to you, Lisa.
And to you.
And
thank you for the trouble you went to organise it to be here with us.
No, it was no trouble at all. I'm glad I had the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me. And as I said, I've never done this before. And something in the universe said to me, when you asked me, do it. So I don't know why, but I was told to do this, so I did it.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you listening to that little voice.
Yeah, it's important to listen to that little voice. Okay, Lisa, love you.